for this. So today, so I'll begin first, and today in this webinar, we will be sharing the results of our mixed methods evaluation of Dance Legacy, which is a program, a trauma-informed counseling and wraparound support program for youth. With this, I would also acknowledge the evaluation team that included me, Elizabeth, along with us. It was Yashvi and Mauricio from our SARAVYC team. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we play, work, learn, and gather is the unceded territory of the Musqueam Nation. And I would also like to acknowledge the many nations on whose land our SARAVYC work takes place. To start this webinar, I wanted to first talk about the Dance Legacy. They work with youth who have experienced trauma. Their vision is that at-risk youth, through insight and empowerment, have the potential to contribute to their community. Dance Legacy provides trauma-informed counseling along with education, vocational, and other supporting programs. For example, the heart of their program is trauma-informed therapy and recovery. Along with them, they have Dance Diner, which provides youth with professional cooking skills and business management. And basically, with job skills training, their goal is to help youth build self-esteem, maintain positive mental health, and secure employment. They also have a fitness and recreation program, which provides secure and inclusive environment for youth clients to participate in physical health, socialize with peers, and cultivate health habits, as they believe positive physical health impacts positive mental health. They also have hamper program that provides free food hampers to youth clients from ages 15 to 25. And along with them, they have Indigenous cultural workshops that connect Indigenous youth to community and culture, which helps them to build resiliency and improve mental health outcomes. Today, we are joined by a Dance Legacy team. So if you have any questions, they'll be here to answer those. So SARAVYC collaborated with Dance Legacy along with their community partners to evaluate key approaches and principles of their model of trauma-informed mental health and addictions care at Dance Legacy. So for this evaluation that spanned from December 2023 to January 2025, for this evaluation, we used a mixed methods approach that included both qualitative and quantitative research. For the qualitative one, we first interviewed key leaders and staff of Dance Legacy, along with their community service partners, to assess their experiences and perceptions of Dance Legacy approach, which also helped us identify the feature of their model of care that guided us in our assessment of their existing client data. And so we drew on their client data, which was collected at intake and discharge, to measure outcomes and change over time. Intake data were collected from their earliest available record in their database through July 2025, and discharge data collection continued through early January 2025. This provided us a 6-month window between intake and discharge to evaluate program outcomes for clients with a reasonable time frame. The data collection process involved 2 main sources. They had a prior data charting software, which was RegBag, and then we also used their, during our analysis, they were moving to a new system, which was called ShareVision, and we used that as well to access client data. We had around 419 clients from their counseling program, because that's what we were evaluating, which had both intake and discharge data. And we used descriptive statistics, bivariate analysis, and paired sample t-tests to analyze the outcome measures at intake versus discharge. Coming to who are Dance Legacy clients, so from their client intake data, we saw how clients reflected the diversity they had. So it included 45% of their clients identify as female, 26% as male, 12% as gender diverse youth. They also had 29% that identified as LGBTQ2SIA+. The client data in the intake also kind of showed their diverse ethnic backgrounds, with top three were like 28% Caucasian, 13% Indigenous, 13% multiracial, but there were other ethnicities like South Asian, East Asian, Hispanics, and so on. Around 15% clients reported food insecurity, 20% expressed hoping to return to school, and 12% reported looking for work. And these client data also, along with this, they also collect data to identify the goal. So a significant aspect of Dance Legacy's work involves clients identifying their goals, because Dance Legacy is not just implementing a counseling program. They have this wraparound care, which range from housing to food assistance to help with applications, as I mentioned in my first slide. So as you can see in this bar graph, they have goals that were from counseling to helping with ID documents, to helping with food security, employment, transportation, income, schooling, housing, phone, and medical as well. So first, I'll delve into findings from the interviews, and so first, I'll share the strengths that were identified from the by participants of Dance Legacy program. A key strength of the program was its well-developed trauma-focused therapeutic model. The participants shared, like, unlike other free services that may offer limited group sessions, Dance Legacy believes that trauma cannot be resolved in a short-term intervention and needs a holistic approach. And they also shared the 16-session model, therapy session model that Dance Legacy follows. So as one of the therapists shared, we offer 16 sessions, which I think is a really great period of time to offer counseling, because I think working with population takes a while to support folks to be able to regulate, have some stability. And another participant shared, a lot of youth come with different trauma, and having only 3 or 4 sessions is not going to do anything. So they believe in long-term counseling program. Another strength that was identified and often highlighted by participants is the program's focus on inclusive and culturally appropriate care. For instance, Dance Legacy has a gender diverse and multicultural staff, which recognize the importance of lived experiences. And also from a cultural perspective, the program also provides relevant and meaningful programming for youth to engage in. As one of the therapists said, and also having counselor who also identifies someone in this community really helps to help these youth, because they feel like, oh, someone gets me. I don't have to explain things to help you understand. I feel like that helps. So that was one of the key strengths that was also identified along with their therapeutic model. Then we also kind of tried to understand what are the facilitators in implementing Dance Legacy program, and participants frequently discussed wraparound care as a key facilitator of the program, which I mentioned, like all the other programs along with counseling. And another facilitator was their flexible and adaptable counseling program. So the counseling program, which is structured around 16 sessions, provides considerable flexibility and adaptability, which has been identified as a significant advantage by participants. As one of their community partner identified how that has helped in engaging the youth in this program. Other facilitators involved staff training and development. So that also contributed to a lot of success that participant identified was getting that continuous training for their staff. And other was interagency collaboration, as one of the partner identified how Dance Legacy has helped provide low barrier option for the youth. So that kind of interagency collaboration is also one of the significant facilitator for the program. And now we will go on to the analysis of client data that Elizabeth will share with you. Elizabeth?
Thanks, Monica. Hello, everyone. So as part of this evaluation, we actually used our qualitative feedback from the interviews to guide the kinds of things we were looking at with the client data. And 2 of the key things that we actually looked at in evaluating were scales that were collected both at assessment and at discharge from the program. One of them was actually client reported, and that was their severity of symptoms scale. And this is a scale that the responses sort of range from 1 to 10, and it combines the Clinical Global Impression of Severity, CGI-S, with various outcome ratings. And so this gives an average score. The other measure was actually a clinician reported functionality or functional assessment. And this is actually a activities of daily living scale where they're assessing the client's overall ability to function in daily life. So what we did was we compared for each of the participants their intake at assessment and their discharge scores on that scale. And the average change, as you can see, for self-reported severity, it went down on average from 6.2 to 4.8. And this is a significant change. And I can mention that that Cohen's D in the parentheses, that's an effect size. It's a measure of that change. A Cohen's D of 0.61 is actually a moderate effect. You also see that functionality increased. So the average score by clinicians was 5.5, and it actually increased to 6.7, which again is a moderate impact. One of the things we noted in doing these analyses is that we saw larger effect sizes for the 65 non-binary clients compared to those who identified with a binary gender. That self-reported severity was just a little bit higher at intake, and it was a little bit lower at final discharge. But the Cohen's change, that Cohen's effect size or Cohen's D was a 0.94. That's actually a large effect size. And again, the functionality scale started slightly lower, but actually increased to a greater amount. And that was, again, a moderate effect size. So this is a measuring of change from intake to discharge that is an excellent measure of both the participant or client and the clinician assessment of that change. We also looked at the end of the program, there was client data in terms of whether or not they said yes or no to changes that were designed as part of what the program was potentially supposed to be contributing to. So things like, did this enhance your self-esteem? Did it increase your social support? Do you feel like you've got better coping skills or better relationships? Or, you know, has your substance use behavior decreased? Or has the conflicts that you're involved in, have you seen a decrease in those? So this is not a before and after. This is just at the end. And it should be taken a little bit with consideration because this is being asked of people who've been part of the program, of people who are in, you know, offering the program. But one of the things to just point out is that in this assessment of the things that people are identifying as potential improvements, one of the key ones is improvements in coping skills, which is a fundamental part of what Dan's Legacy Counseling offers. And on average, you know, like half of the sample overall reported improved coping skills. And that was actually more than half among the gender diverse youth. And again, maybe the area where there was the least amount of change is in reduction in substance use behaviors, although there was a proportion, nearly 1 in 10, who did say that that did change. All of these are signs that there are observed improvements and changes that clients are reporting. Now, this is a program that offers 16 sessions, and about half of the participants actually had fewer than 16 sessions, and almost half actually had the 16 or more sessions. And so that gave us an opportunity to actually look at kind of a dose-response relationship, or rather, if you get what they're recommending, the full 16, do you see a difference versus if you've had fewer sessions? And partly, of course, it's important to remember that there may be reasons why people have fewer sessions in terms of they may leave the service sooner, or they may have other circumstances. But one of the things we did see was that the average change in the self-reported severity of symptoms scale was quite a bit bigger if they had 16 or more sessions. There was still change with fewer than 17 or fewer than 16 sessions, but it was quite a bit higher with the 16 or more sessions. And likewise, when it came to the functionality scale assessed by clinicians. It was nearly a point improvement for those who got any sessions, but the change was almost twice as big with the 16 or more sessions. We also looked at the self-reported outcomes at the end of counseling based on the number of counseling sessions that people had. And as you can see here, again, a larger percent of people who got 16 or more sessions reported improvements in these areas, including a large number who reported improved coping skills and self-regulation skills and improvements in relationships and reductions in some of those initially reported symptoms. So these are really helpful to know that actually getting the 16 or more sessions that are part of the model does seem to contribute to a larger amount of change for young people. So this is definitely an assessment of, yep, more is better. And this is adhering to this model does provide that improvement. We also saw with this clinical the charting data that, as you recall, Dan's Legacy has counseling and additional wraparound programs that include food baskets and connection to employment and partnering and referrals to other services. And while the majority of both those who identify as female or male reported only participating in the counseling program, we still had at least 1 in 3 who participated in at least another program with Dan's Legacy. And when it came to gender diverse youth, there was well over half who were involved in counseling plus some other program. So this really does speak to their work in actually engaging diverse populations and providing those, connecting them to services. We now have, as additional parts of the interviews, the impacts that people felt they saw with Dan's Legacy. And I will hand that back to Monica to conclude.
Elizabeth, so the long-term impact that many participants highlighted were the positive outcomes, particularly in relation to the vulnerable youth they work with. They share that their experiences have been valuable both personally and professionally and expressed a sense of fulfillment in being part of the youth's journey. But also participants discussed the long-term impact of their work, emphasizing that the youth they support will ultimately thrive and be in a position to help others in the future. And one of the beautiful experience that one of the therapists shared is that how they as you can see from the first quote, I think of one client which comes to mind immediately that I started with, who was not in school. She'd finished high school, but she was at such a state of depression that she couldn't walk, couldn't go to school, was not functioning well physically, mentally, emotionally. And today she's living on her own, second year of university. It is just so exciting. And community partner organizations share like how Dan's Legacy has helped marginalized youth in providing a low barrier option for mental health services and a free one, which is hard to find. Again, with any community level intervention, there are some barriers or challenges, and these were some of the challenges that were identified by the participant. And resource limitation was the one which was identified by majority of one, which encompassing everything from insufficient office space to high staff turnover. Additionally, there is a desire to expand services, as you said, how youth are accessing other services. So there was a huge demand of other wraparound services as well. And finally, participants shared that some of the most helpful programs were the ones where youth could connect with staff in relaxed, informal settings like weekend lunch drop-ins or small group nights for specific communities like square drop-ins. So these were some really successful programs. But of course, there is always a limitation of funding and resources. So some of them had to be discontinued. So of course, these all programs come with that limitation of resources. Another one was a significant barrier was the client engagement. While staff are dedicated to effectively implementing the program, challenges arise when the program is not fully engaged or received by the clients. However, this barrier is somewhat mitigated by the program's flexibility and willingness to adapt to the needs of the youth they serve. But of course, despite this, some accommodation, just such as meetings with clients outside of regular office hours, remain difficult to manage. To summarize, this evaluation is an example of assessing an existing program. And that's why we did this mixed methods, where our first goal was to understand Dan's legacy's goals, because that what helped us to then kind of design our assessment with their existing client data. And so, which highlighted the strengths of the program, which was 16 session model or trauma informed care that they perform, that they kind of implemented for the youth. Again, as you have seen in the data, how improvement has been seen, especially among gender diverse youth, which also suggests how program is addressing the needs of marginalized youth. And to conclude, I will let Elizabeth share further recommendations.
Right. So as we were reflecting on the evaluation and the ways that things could be done differently or go forward, and the recommendations that we shared with Dan's legacy, one of the key ones that's a potential for bias is that because the discharge outcomes and the evaluation measures are actually counselors are responsible for obtaining that feedback from their clients, which in part makes sense because they've already established a trusting relationship. Sometimes, though, that can lead to a bit of overestimated improvement from clients, in part because of that existing rapport in the relationship. The client might not want to disappoint their therapist. So that would be what we would call social desirability. So part of what we are looking at thinking about is, are there ways that Dan's legacy could still maintain that sort of trusting relationship, but instead have an opportunity for some of that feedback to not be elicited directly by the counselor? And the other thing that we were looking at is that sometimes identifying evaluation measures for discharge outcomes, maybe including some of the more commonly validated ones in other like large clinical programs, or in what's in the system more generally, in part because then it allows that enhanced tracking and comparisons with other programs. The impacts that we saw were really quite strong, and that speaks to the work that Dan's legacy does. But it's also one of those where, because these aren't necessarily the same measures that other services are using, we can't actually compare how strong or solid these improvements are compared to the other programs, where these same clients may not have the same, like they may not be having the same outcomes because they're struggling in those other systems. For our analysis or evaluation, the timing of the data collection was a challenge, only because Dan's legacy was really in the middle of changing to a new software system and changing some of their other programming, which was great and important, but it does make evaluation tricky, because it meant that there was this, how do we match the materials and the data from the older system with the new system? And I want to give a shout out to Yashvi Maida, one of our team members, who spent a lot of time at Dan's legacy on their secured computers, trying to extract the information from the one system and match it to the next system, and be able to extract that anonymous data for us to be able to do the analyses. So while they had a lot of clients that they saw over the time period that we were doing this evaluation, the matching made it complicated to be able to actually look at the pre-post or the intake and discharge data as it was in the data set and in the charting system. And so that's why there was still a really large number of young people, more than 400, that we were able to evaluate, but they actually see more young people than that. And those who were in the midst of that transition were, it was harder for us to actually connect those. So we're excited about the fact that they now have a consistent system and that everyone is now in the new intake and beginning to have more discharge. So we're actually recommending that they do additional evaluation now that they have fully transitioned to the new system and everybody is on site and understands how to use it, and that creates an opportunity for even greater rigor and power in the results. Finally, I would like to acknowledge that this evaluation was funded in two ways. First, by Health Canada, because this was part of funding that Dan's Legacy received, and we were part of the evaluation. But also, I want to give a shout out to the Community University Engagement support, or CUES funding, because while that wasn't a direct funding of the evaluation, that funding got us together to collaborate and have the conversations and help work together on planning the evaluation and understanding what it is that Dan's Legacy services really do and what their underlying sort of philosophy and theory behind it. So those conversations, including a few over meals, and at the site where Dan's Legacy operates in Surrey, was really a wonderful opportunity. So thank you, UBC CUES, for the opportunity to start this as well. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll now take the opportunity to answer any questions or respond to any comments.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Monica. This was really informative, and it was really cool to hear about all the work that Dan's Legacy does. I know we have a question from Cam in the chat, but it seems like Barbara answered the question already. Cam, if you still have a follow-up question, please feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat. And does anyone else have any question at this point?
Or comments or feedback.
Or comments or feedback. Yes, Jill.
Hi, wonderful. It is just so amazing, this work, and I just went online to Dan's Legacy, and there's some great resources that we can share with students and for others. But question that came to me as you were talking was, did youth ever say what really does the counseling work the best, or is it the kind of sharing together, so the group work, or just the connection with other youth that are going through the same thing? Any sense of that piece?
So our evaluation didn't actually speak directly with the young people.
Right.
It was first an evaluation of the service providers and sort of their partners in the wider community, and then just drawing on the existing charted data rather than talking with youth. That is one of the other sort of next steps that would be great. But I think that perhaps some of the experience of those who are providing these care, and I'm thinking specifically Tom, who is the main clinical director, psychologist of the program, might have some insights into that. Tom, I think you're muted. Say, Tom, you're muted.
There we go.
There you go.
I'm not Barbara, by the way. I'm Tom. I don't know how that works, so my name's there, but I have the beard, Barb doesn't. So anyway, just so you understand how we built this, we started out with only therapy because that's all we were trying to really focus. We partnered with programs that offered other services like housing or education and stuff. But we found that without offering these wraparound programmings, more and more kids were struggling and couldn't, they haven't eaten for 2 days and you're trying to do a therapy session. It's just impossible, right? So we've added the things that make the therapy that much more efficient, and a full stomach a chance to go to we have a fitness program where they go to 2 different rec centers and we pay for it, and they can spend the whole evening, soaking and working out and showering, and have an endless shower there. Most of these kids are in situations where it's horrible where they're living. So there's lots of things that makes therapy more relevant, and just taking out these other stresses, like making sure they have a phone, making sure they have a guitar if they want it, a bike if they want it. These basic kind of things that happen that just these kids have no access to at all. A majority don't anyway. Some of them are doing fine. They have families and stuff, and they have other reasons to be in. But a lot of kids are on income assistance or a PWD, and they're just lost in the city. They're lost, and so giving that wraparound service and making sure they understand that we're not going anywhere, even if they're finished and they need to re-engage again. We always make sure that they know that. And even if we do the 16 sessions, we don't just start normally another group of sessions. We have them pause, digest, kind of thing, a little bit of, and then maybe in 4 months come back and continue on, so that it's not continual therapy. There's nothing worse, I think, than making someone dependent on therapy in the long run. There's a book out now where the therapists were talking about clients who were 27 years in therapy. I was in shock when I hit that part. That's when I finally burnt that book. But we're trying to get them away from us eventually, but we don't stop until we know that they're okay. The programs all have abilities to add to the runway to ensure that they get liftoff before we back off. It's like running after your kid on the bike the first time the training wheels are off. You run real hard for a while, but eventually the kid's is gone. But we want to make sure that they've got to that first rung on the ladder. So that's our whole reason, because there's no sense just doing an intervention and going, oh, well, it didn't work for you, next, another kid. So we really want to make sure that we continue until these kids, or they back off, because sometimes they just can't handle it. They need to have a rest. But we really focus on that. But that's what I wanted to answer that question that was asked.
Great.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. I see Prabjot or Sonia also here.
Hello, good afternoon. I've been going by Sonia since I was about 12, so I'm a UBC alumni, and as soon as I saw your topic, I was thrilled. I'm so thrilled to be here and to hear of your research. The reason is I had a young person approach me in my community where I live. For just, extra pair of ears to hear what he was going through. And he needed no cost counseling. And I happened to come across Dan's legacy at I live very close to the Community Center on Davie and Butte. And I passed it on to him, and he attended the 16 sessions, and it made a huge difference. And I'm so happy that this research has been complete so that Dan's legacy can apply for additional funding, etc. I don't know too much about, obviously, the funding aspect of Dan's legacy, but I'm so grateful now that there is research data affirming, my small lived experience with this young person and the positive experience that they had. And I was like, what? And I think it was Tom I called, and I was like, who are you guys? It's an incredible organization, and I just wanted to share that. It was really interesting to see that half of the young people were good with 16 counseling sessions or less, and half wanted more, and he was in the wanting more part. So I know he was able to find additional counseling and stuff, but what I heard from him, and I'm so happy. That's all I have to say. I just thank you for listening. Yeah.
Sonia, that's great.
I want to be involved, but I'll just stop right here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonia. That's great to hear. It's wonderful to know that one among the hundreds of young people who Dan's Legacy sees that we actually got to do the research with has the similar experience. So that's great.
Thank you. I know we're running out of time, or we actually are already 6 minutes over. So I'm just gonna quickly wrap it up. But thank you again, Elizabeth. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, everyone from Dan's Legacy who are here, and thank you, everyone, for listening. Please feel free to email us later if you have any questions, and we'll see you the third Thursday of next month.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.